Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 8 Part 38 based on novel. So let's start. Time swiftly passed one day after another amidst the tensed atmosphere within Dao Sect. If the earlier hall competition was considered lively, the current atmosphere was truly the prelude of a storm. This was because everyone knew that the Great Sect competition was no longer just a sparring session between seniors and juniors. That place was filled with danger. If one was careless, one would easily end up dead. Besides facing those ferocious monsters in the unique Devil region, one would also have to be constantly on the lookout for any sneak attack by disciples from the other super sects. If one wanted to survive in that environment, not only was there a need for close cooperation within one's team, but there was also a need for them to be powerful. Otherwise, a mistake would not only get oneself killed, but might also end up implicating one's companions. In the face of that danger and pressure, the atmosphere within Dao Sect during this period of time was undoubtedly even more stifling as compared to before the hall competition. Lin Dong was seated on a cliff near the Pill River. Waves after waves of mighty natural yuan power continuously surged from around him before they finally poured into his body. There was a faint river-flowing sound being emitted from within his body. Below Lin Dong was a 10,000 feet large platform. At this moment, there were at least 10,000 Dao Sect disciples quietly seated on it. Vast and mighty yuan power flowed within the platform. Finally, threads of it were being absorbed by these disciples. If one was to discuss in terms of individual strength, these disciples might not be considered as the elite. However, with such a huge lineup, the absorption momentum was quite a sight to behold. Lin Dong observed the vast and mighty scene below before he promptly stretched his lazy waist. Ever since he returned to Dao Sect, he was generally quite relaxed. Even though he did not skimp on his usual training, as one of the senior direct disciples, Lin Dong did not need to participate in these collective training sessions. Most of his training was done on his own. After stretching his lazy waist, Lin Dong's eyes suddenly swept towards his right. He subsequently saw a familiar black-robed human figure seated on a rock a short distance away. The black heavy sword on his back caused this figure to appear exceptionally lonely. "Come over for a talk." Wang Yang spoke faintly. He also turned his head over when he saw Lin Dong's eyes looking at his direction. Lin Dong hesitated for a moment after hearing this before he finally nodded. His body moved and he blotted over before sitting down beside Wang Yang. Seated beside Wang Yang, Lin Dong glanced at the stubble and injury-filled face of the former. He was likely quite handsome in the past. However, he seemed exceptionally old and bitter now. "I heard that your group killed a Yuan Gate elder and 2 soul generals." Wang Yang turned his head and looked at Lin Dong. At this moment, his originally soulless eyes had an extremely heated emotion flowing within them. Lin Dong was momentarily startled. Other than Ying Xuanzi, he never told anyone else about what happened. How did Wang Yang know about it? "Huan told me. She seems to worry that I will hate you because of the incident during the hall competition. Therefore, she secretly came over and told me," Wang Yang explained. Lin Dong was speechless. Immediately, he smiled and shook his head. That lass had never appeared in front of him ever since she returned to Dao Sect. It was rumored that she was forcefully dragged by her elder sister to undertake a retreat and train. Unexpectedly, she would actually tell Wang Yang about this. However, her good intentions still caused Lin Dong to be a little touched. She has underestimated senior Wang Yang's magnanimity. Lin Dong laughed. "She understands me very well. The reason she did this is likely because she was concerned." Wang Yang replied in a faint voice. Lin Dong was stunned, but he had no idea how he should reply to this. Hence, he could only remain silent. "The matter this time around is truly a joyous one. I have muddled outside for so many years, but the Yuan Gate disciples that I killed were hardly significant. Compared to the elder and 2 soul generals that you guys finished off, it is hardly worth mentioning." Wang Yang parted his mouth and laughed. His eyes appeared to be scarlet. "That is only because there was a friend who was tagging along. At my current strength, I am still unable to kill an expert at the advanced mysterious life stage. Lin Dong shook his head and said. Wang Yang nodded. He mused for a moment before speaking. With your current strength, you can be considered outstanding even amongst the super sect younger generation members in Eastern Xian region. However, there is still a gap when compared to the top disciples in Yuan Gate. Senior Wang Yang is referring to the three little kings in Yuan Gate. Lin Dong narrowed his eyes and asked softly. Little Yuan King, Little Ling King, Little Lei King. The three of them are personally taught by the three chiefs in Yuan Gate, and they are the strongest younger generation members in Yuan Gate. From a certain point of view, they can be considered as the strongest younger generation members in the entire Eastern Xian region. They will likely be our greatest threat in the upcoming Great Sect competition. A dark and stern obscure color flashed across Wang Yang's eyes as he slowly said. Just how strong are these three little kings? Lin Dong curled his mouth and asked. The three of them had once exchanged blows with mysterious life stage experts. Although they were not victorious, they were able to withdraw without being hurt, Wang Yang replied faintly. Lin Dong's pupils hardened. Even the current him could only retreat when facing an expert at the mysterious life stage. This was because the two of them were at completely different levels, and it would be very difficult for him to force himself to exchange blows with such an expert. Those three little kings were actually able to achieve this. It seems like they were indeed worthy of being personal disciples of the three sect chiefs in Yuan Gate. I have once exchanged blows with Little Lei King, Lei Qian. Wang Yang lowered his eyes and said. Oh? What happened in the end? Lin Dong lifted his brows and asked. Wang Yang was silent for a moment before he promptly unbuttoned his shirt. Promptly, Lin Dong saw that there was a glaring palm imprint injury on Wang Yang's chest. There were numerous slight scars at the edge of the palm imprint that appeared to have been burnt by flames. Although the scar of this palm imprint had diminished greatly, Lin Dong was still able to deduce just how serious of an injury Wang Yang had suffered at that time. That palm was likely sufficient to kill him. A punch in exchange for a palm. However, after this palm, I ended up seriously wounded while he was still able to fight. If it is not because I was quick to escape, I might have died in his hand, Wang Yang mocked himself. Lin Dong's eyes were somewhat solemn. He had exchanged blows with Wang Yang and was clearly aware of just how powerful the latter was. Yet, that little Lei King, Lei Qian, could defeat Wang Yang. His strength has likely reached the peak of 9 Yuan Nirvana stage. It was even possible that his body had begun to form some life qi, and he has touched the entrance to the mysterious life stage. Amongst the three little kings in Yuan Gate, Lei Qian is merely ranked third. Above him, there are still Little Ling King and Little Yuan King. Wang Yang's expression was gloomy as he slowly explained. Even he is merely ranked third. Lin Dong curled his mouth. The seriousness in his eyes became increasingly dense. The Dao sect had typically been suppressed by Yuan Gate. Just in terms of the quality of the disciples alone, the latter far surpassed the former. This time around, even if you are included, there are only 3 Dao sect disciples who can rival a 9 Yuan Nirvana stage expert. Even if we exclude the 3 little kings and exclude the 2 soul generals whom you killed, there are at least 6 individuals who are at 9 Yuan Nirvana stage. Lin Dong laughed bitterly. Not only were they inferior in terms of quality, but there was also such a big gap in terms of quantity. It seems like the upcoming Great Sect competition does not spell well for our Dao sect. Lin Dong sighed. He subsequently asked, besides the 3 little kings in Yuan Gate, are there any troublesome individuals from the other 6 super sects? The other 6 great super sects are no pushovers as well. The strength of their disciples will not be inferior to our Dao sect. However, the most outstanding person amongst them should likely be Ling Qingshu from 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace. Ling Qingshu. The hand under Lin Dong's sleeve was basically clenched almost instantly. His straight body also suddenly stiffened for a moment. He was clearly unable to remain calm and indifferent when he heard her name. Wang Yang glanced at Lin Dong in a strange manner. Clearly, he had sensed the change in the latter's body. However, he did not probe. All he did was said, Ling Qingshu's reputation amongst the younger generation in Eastern Xian region is not inferior to any of the three little kings in Yuan Gate. She is also an extremely rare genius, and she has already been selected by the Palace Chief of Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace to be her final disciple. Back then, Xiao Xiao once exchanged blows with Ling Qingshu. However, she was defeated by the latter. However, the relationship between our Dao sect and the Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace is quite decent. Unless some great accident occur, they will likely not attack us. Of course, if we can join forces with them, it will be good news for us. Ling Qingshu is extremely powerful. At the very least, that little Lei King, Lei Qian, will be no match for her. Wang Yang appeared to mock himself when he spoke of this point. Although both parties were not considered enemies, Ling Qingshu would clearly not intervene in the grudge between Dao sect and Yuan Gate. At the very most, she will just stand by idly. Not helping either party was already the best she could do. So powerful her. Lin Dong muttered to himself. Some heat gradually surged out from deep within his lowered eyes. The other super sects also have some renowned and powerful young experts. The upcoming Great Sect competition will be quite interesting. I only wonder how our Dao sect would fare, Wang Yang slowly said. Lin Dong grinned and nodded. After which, he raised his head. At this moment, storm clouds drifted over from the horizon before they finally covered the entire sky. I really look forward to it. The sky became a little darker. However, Wang Yang could hear the soft laughter that was being transmitted over from beside his ear. He tilted his head slightly before seeing the young man beside him lifting the corner of his mouth into an arc. Hot and sharp. On top of that, there seemed to be a little anticipation. Ling Qingshu, do you still remember that tender youth from Great Yang Empire? At this moment, the enormous square on the top of towering mountain in the middle of Dao sect had countless number of Dao sect's disciples quietly standing on it. Their eyes contained traces of respect and envy as they looked at the center of the square. A few hundred disciples were standing orderly at that spot. Waves after waves of mighty yuan power fluctuation spread out from their bodies like floodwaters before engulfing the entire square. Every one of them had at least reached 6 yuan nirvana stage, and they were the most outstanding disciples from the 4 halls. At the same time, they would also represent the Dao sect in the upcoming Great Sect competition. This qualification proved that they are the best amongst the current disciples in Dao sect. A couple of figures were standing straight in front of these disciples. Lin Dong was also one of them. Behind him were Jian Hao, Pang Tong, and other senior direct disciples from Desolate Hall. The eyes of these people were filled with a respect that could not be concealed when they looked at the skinny figure in front of them. After the fight during the hall competition, Lin Dong's reputation within Dao sect had undoubtedly reached its peak. Not only did the disciples from Desolate Hall obey his every command, but even some of the senior direct disciples from the other 3 halls also felt heartfelt admiration towards him. The Great Sect competition was about to begin soon. Naturally, Dao sect had also begun to consolidate their members as they prepared to head to the unique Devil region in a large group. Lin Dong stood at the leader's spot amongst the group. His eyes were scanning his surroundings in a bored manner. After which, he saw Ying Huan, who was at the front of the Sky Hall's group a short distance away. The young lady had clearly also noticed Lin Dong's wandering eyes. Immediately, a lively, clear, charming smile surfaced on her pretty face. Her enchanting manner caused quite a number of disciples around to throw envious gazes towards Lin Dong. Although it was easy for Ying Huan to become close with other disciples, anyone with sharp eyes was able to tell the slightly different attitude the young lady had when dealing with Lin Dong. Lin Dong also smiled at Ying Huan. He was just about to speak when a rushing wind sound appeared on the tall stage in front of them. After which, a couple of figures landed on it. The one in front was the master of Dao sect, Ying Xuanzi. Behind him were the hall chiefs and deputy hall chiefs of the 4 halls. The private conversations on the square immediately came to a halt when Ying Xuanzi appeared. Everyone's eyes contained rich respect when they paused on the white-clothed and elegant Ying Xuanzi. Ying Xuanzi stood on the tall stage. His eyes overlooked the young disciples with fiery hot eyes below. Immediately, His warm spring breeze-like voice resounded beside the ears of everyone on the square. As a Tao sect disciple, it is likely that everyone should be familiar with the danger and cruelty of the great sect competition. This time around, it is not a friendly spar. The only ones whom you can trust are your fellow martial brothers. There is not much that I wish to say. All I hope is that the number of people who leave will be the same as the number of disciples who return. That is the best I hope for. Ying Xuanzi's voice had an additional solemnness. His expression was complicated as he watched those excited young disciples. He was aware that these disciples' faces would definitely gain an additional callousness once they returned. However, the companions beside them might be the price for them to learn that cold sternness. One must ultimately pay a price to grow up. During this great sect competition, Xiao Xiao will be the commander. Lin Dong and Wang Yang will be assisting her. I hope that the three of you will be able to bring every single one of them back. Ying Xuanzi deeply roared. His eyes were stern as he stared at the three people in front of the group. Understood. Ying Xiaoxiao's pretty face turned solemn as she replied in a deep voice. Standing beside her, Lin Dong and Wang Yang looked at each other before they gently nodded. This was not going to be an easy task. This time around, the Hall Chiefs from the 4 halls will accompany all of you to the unique Devil region. However, upon entering the unique Devil region, you will be on your own. Are all of you prepared? The eyes of those disciples on the square were determined and wildly hot. None of them had any intention of withdrawing. A smile surfaced on Ying Xuanzi's face when he saw this scene. After which, he spoke in a soft and slow voice, if everyone is prepared, all of you should go. The entire Tao sect will be waiting for all of you here to return in triumph. Everyone on the square had an excited expression involuntarily surfacing on their young faces once Ying Xuanzi's words sounded out. The Hall Chief of Sky Hall, Qi Lei, also stepped forward at this moment. After which, he waved his large hand. The other 3 Hall Chiefs also rushed into midair. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Those Tao sect's disciples on the square also hurriedly rushed into midair upon seeing this. Their formation was quite orderly. After which, all of them lowered their heads and cupped their hands together while they looked at the people littered over the mountains. Roar! The densely packed Tao sect's disciples on the surrounding mountains also cupped their hands together towards the sky. Soon after, a wave-like low roar resounded over the place. Seniors, bring glory to our Tao sect! The low roar rumbled and spread, causing the sky to shake a little. At the same time, it also caused the fresh blood within one's body to boil abruptly. Lin Dong exhaled a deep breath of air. This scene in front of him caused even him to involuntarily feel impulsive, as though hot blood had rushed into his head. Go? Qi Lei took one look around him. After which, he waved his hand and a low and deep sound appeared. After his voice sounded, he immediately flashed and rushed out. Swoosh! When his body moved, hundreds of figures behind him also rushed out almost instantly. In an instant, hurried wind-splitting sound resounded in an ear-piercing manner. Finally, a large group of people were just like a cluster of storm clouds as they swiftly left Tao sect like wind sweeping the clouds. Standing on the tall stage, when Ying Xuanzi saw that large group of figures rapidly leaving, the hand under his sleeve involuntarily tightened slowly. Their Tao sect had suffered great losses during the previous great sect competitions. He wondered what the result would be this time around. This time around, a total of 300 people from our Tao sect is participating in the great sect competition. They can be considered to be the most outstanding disciples selected from the 4 halls. This lineup is quite significant. In midair, Lin Dong flew at the front of the disciples from Desolate Hall. Right now, Pang Tong was beside him and he was softly telling him about the number of Tao sect's disciples participating this time around. Do you know approximately how many disciples Yuan Gate would send? Lin Dong softly asked. It should be around 500 or so. Pang Tong thought for a moment and said. Lin Dong nodded slightly. Their lineup was quite significant. Moreover, the participants were considered as the elites amongst their disciples. From this point, one could tell that the strength of Yuan Gate was indeed slightly stronger than Tao sect. We will hurry to the unique Devil City now. That is the place where all the various super sects will gather. It is likely that the groups from the other super sects have already begun their journey. Soon, we will be able to meet them at the unique Devil City. Of course, the 8 great super sects are not the only ones who will participate in the great sect competition. Some of the other powerful factions in Eastern Xian region will also send their disciples to participate. This could be considered as the top exchange amongst the younger generation members. Only those reputable young experts in Eastern Xian region will participate. That situation can only be described as chaotic. Lin Dong nodded slightly after he heard Pang Tong's words. That unique devil region was already a dangerous place. In addition, there were currently so many people with unknown intentions participating in it. One simply could not imagine how chaotic things would be should the situation spin out of control. Since the other sects are hurrying over, it is likely that the 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace will also appear. Lin Dong's eyes looked into the distant. A proud figure surfaced once again within his mind. When he met her at the 100 Empire Mountain and realized the enormous gap between them, Lin Dong chose to conceal his identity. He once said that he would have the qualifications for her to take him seriously the next time he appeared in front of her. Now, he already possessed the qualification. He could be considered as one of the elite younger generation members in Eastern Xian region, and he was not afraid of facing any one of them, even in a life and death battle. This naturally included the so-called 3 little kings in Yuan Gate. Ling Qingzhu, it has been 5 years, let us meet directly this time around. The fist under Lin Dong's sleeve slowly tightened. After which, he lifted his head and looked into the distance. The arc on the corner of his mouth became increasingly dense. This time around, it would be a gathering of the elites. The unique devil region was situated in the middle of Eastern Xian region. This region was considered as one of the most well-known areas in Eastern Xian region. The Great War during the ancient times was too distant of a memory for the people now, and they did not know the backdrop of that earth-shaking battle. However, they were aware that countless experts from the ancient times died within the unique devil region. Hence, many alluring ancient treasures and inheritances were hidden in this extremely dangerous land. Even during a typical day, the area around the unique devil region was always bustling with people. Although the unique devil region was extremely dangerous, there were still countless experts continuously visiting it. After all, in this world, the allure of treasures was sufficient to cause one to be unable to resist and forget about death. Outside of the unique devil region, there were many cities. Amongst them, the unique devil city was the grandest one. As it was a chaotic place filled with all sorts of people, the city did not have anyone managing it. However, in any place, as long as there was a large group of people, there would naturally be rules being born. Regardless of whether it was an open rule or an unspoken one must naturally obey them in order to survive. Hence, this unique devil city, which supposedly belonged to no one, had its own unspoken set of rules and managed to survive on its own order. When the large group from Dao sect gradually entered the unique devil region, they were also able to see that there were quite a number of people flying across the sky and rushing over from all directions in the sky. Everyone's destination was clearly the same. Since it was an extremely grand event in Eastern Xian region, there was no need to even mention about Great Sect competition's ability to attract participants. It is truly spectacular. Admiration flashed across Lin Dong's eyes when he saw this scene. Although he had experienced the 100 Empire War and it was quite a large event, it was clearly inferior when compared to the Great Sect competition. After all, during that 100 Empire War, a 6 Yuan Nirvana stage practitioner was already the top participant, while in this competition, the cultivation level was merely the entry qualification to participate. We have already entered the unique devil region. It is likely that we will reach the unique devil city soon. All of you will know what is called spectacular when we reach that place. Ha ha. Pang Tong laughed from beside Lin Dong. Lin Dong nodded slightly. He lifted his eyes and looked into the distance. Ever since he had entered this region, he noticed that the color of the ground had turned dark black. This color gradually became even richer as he extended his sight. In the end, it was as though the distant sky had become extremely dark, causing one's heart to feel pressured. This dark color caused Lin Dong's heart to feel somewhat uncomfortable. He had obtained some memories left behind from the ancient times before. Therefore, he was aware of just how frightening and evil these unknown dark creatures were. No one knew just what was hidden within this grand ancient battlefield. While Lin Dong lowered his head and fell into a deep thought, large groups of people flew past them rapidly. This continued for around 10 minutes before an enormous mountain appeared. After which, an earth-shaking noise suddenly spread across the sky. Lin Dong lifted his head after being disturbed by this noise. Soon after, he saw a seemingly endless black city in his sight. The city was just like an ancient black dragon that stood in a lonely manner and emitted an ancient and icy cold feeling. Human figures entered and left the sky around the black city like a locust swarm. A monstrous and deafening noise also swept out from it and covered this entire area. This is the unique Devil City. Pang Tong pointed towards the enormous black thing, parted the corner of his mouth and laughed. Follow me into the city. The unique Devil City is chaotic and has all sorts of people. Everyone should be careful. Standing in front of the group, Chi Lei warned them in a stern manner. After which, he exchanged glances with Chen Zhen and the other hall chiefs. Only then did he rush out and led the large group to fly into the enormous city. Although the human figures who had arrived around the unique Devil City were just like Locust, it was still rare for such a large group of people to enter the city all at once. Hence, the Dao sect group attracted the eyes of the entire place when they approached the unique Devil City. Are they from Dao sect? Even they have arrived. They are indeed one of the 8 super sects for mysterious life stage experts leading the group. This is quite grand. They are not the ones participating in the great sect competition. Instead, it will be a fight between their disciples. During the last competition, it is rumored that Dao sect suffered quite a heavy loss. Even their most outstanding disciple back then died in the hands of Yuan Gate. To be honest, those fellows from Yuan Gate are truly ruthless. That's right. The grudge between Yuan Gate and Dao sect is very deep. I wonder who will be able to gain the upper hand this time around. It is likely going to be Yuan Gate again. The reputation of the 3 little kings in Yuan Gate is extremely well known. It is likely that no one amongst the Dao sect younger generation members can compete with them. Some time ago, there was a pretty renowned newcomer in Dao sect. He seems to be called Lin Dong and he even defeated Yao Ling from Devil Seal Mass. I have heard about this matter as well. However, Yao Ling cannot be compared with the 3 little kings in Yuan Gate. In any case, there is going to be a good show during this great sect competition. Private conversations swiftly spread over the entire place and some of them also landed into the ears of the Dao sect's disciples. Immediately, their eyes became a little furious and gloomy. Down the Yuan Gate. If I fail to kill a few of them during this great sect competition, how can I be accountable to the juniors from Desolate Hall? Jian Hao's expression was dark and solemn as he gritted his teeth and said. Quite a number of Dao sect's disciples beside him nodded in agreement. Lin Dong curled his mouth. It seemed like the enmity between Dao sect and Yuan Gate was quite deep. It was likely that they would not pass by each other peacefully within the unique Devil region should they meet. Chi Lei and the others had indifferent expression in contrast to these outraged disciples. They were not overly concerned. Their expression suddenly changed when they led the disciples and walked inside the unique Devil region. They turned their heads and looked towards another part of the sky. Some hurried rushing wind sounds also appeared from that spot. After which, a similarly large group of people appeared in front of their eyes. They are? Lin Dong narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. There were quite a number of people in that group as well and they were all wearing grey robes. Moreover, a dark and stern ripple was being vaguely emitted from their bodies, involuntarily attracting one's attention. The people from Thousand Puppet Sect. Pang Tong softly said. Oh. Lin Dong's brows were lifted faintly. The Thousand Puppet Sect was also one of the 8 super sects. However, their method of fighting was exceptional. Moreover, they were extremely troublesome to deal with. That was because every Thousand Puppet sect's disciple possessed a life essence puppet. Since he had a puppet before, Lin Dong was naturally clearly aware of this. Do you see the person right in front? If I am not mistaken, he should be the most outstanding person amongst the Thousand Puppet Sect younger generation members, Demon Gui Li. Demon Gui Li. Lin Dong's eyes looked over. All he saw was a man standing straight behind two grey-robed elders. It was a grey-clothed young man with an indifferent expression. A greyish-white colour appeared on the young man's face. Moreover, the dark and cold ripple that was vaguely emitted from within his body was also unusually powerful. Clearly, he had reached the 9-yuan nirvana stage. It is rumored that his life essence puppet has also been refined to a grade 9 soul puppet, and it is not inferior to a 9-yuan nirvana stage expert. We must be careful if we meet him in the future. A surprised tinge flashed across Lin Dong's eyes. Grade 9 soul puppet. Putting it in this context, this fellow could basically use 2 to fight 1 when battling others. It appeared that the grey-clothed young man sensed something as well when Lin Dong was looking at him. His eyes, which contained a greyish hue, shot over indifferently. It appeared as though there was a trace of dark and cold feeling vaguely penetrating through the air and engulfing him. Kai? Lin Dong's expression was calm. An invisible mental energy spread apart and directly expelled the dark and cold aura, which felt just like maggots in one's bones. A trace of devouring power was adhered to his mental energy, which directly devoured all the dark and cold aura, which was difficult to deal with, before expelling them. Huh? That grey-clothed man's expression changed only when his dark and cold aura was being devoured. A surprised expression flashed across his face. This dark and cold aura was something unique to their Thousand Puppet Sect. Once it wrapped over someone, it would cause that person to feel a great headache. However, that disciple from the Dao sect was actually able to resolve it so easily. Interesting, it is unexpected that Dao sect actually has another outstanding person besides Ying Xiaoxiao. The grey-clothed young man laughed softly. Immediately, he slowly withdrew his gaze. Let's go. 2 grey-clothed old men in front of that grey-clothed disciple exchanged glances with Qi Lei's group. They did not say anything as they waved their hands and led the disciples from Thousand Puppet Sect into the city. After they reached the city, Qi Lei also led everyone and headed towards part of the city. Everyone in the surrounding sky looked at these 2 super sects which had arrived in the city. After which, they rubbed their hands together with an eager expression in their eyes. A grand event in Eastern Xian region was finally about to begin. No one knew which party would be able to come up on top. This video will end here.